In this section, we're going to talk about Ansible roles. So let's look at a larger playbook that we have here. And if we start to look at this playbook, we can see certain sections that we have. We have a section for variables. We have a section for tasks. And in this task, I'm doing an iOS config operation. I also have a templating task. Now, I started to talk to you about Jinja 2 templating for filters. There's also a templating module that you can use where you can completely generate output files from some source Jinja 2 template. And we're going to talk about that a lot more later in the class. And then finally, I get down here to a handler section. This handler is called by this notify write mem. So if iOS config generates any changes, then this write mem handler is called. This templating task here uses this source Jinja 2 template and generates this output file. And in this example, the source Jinja 2 template is just located right in this source directory, and I'll go ahead and remove the output file as it'll get generated dynamically when we execute the play. Oops, I still have my callback plugin enabled, so let me go ahead and disable that callback plugin so that it operates normally. And then here you see we get the output that we're expecting to get. So we get a show IPint brief, we generate our template. Let me remove that out file again. And then we called our write mem handler to save the configuration. Okay, now we have all of this in a single playbook. One large playbook with all of this combined. And these tasks could be a lot of tasks. And here we only have a single play. We could have a bunch of plays that we need to execute. So what roles allow us to start to do is to break these things into more modular sections. So for example, say we wanted to include vars in some external file. Say we wanted to have a separate file dedicated for tasks. Say with templating, we wanted to have our templates stored in some templates directory. Similarly, say we had some other files that we were going to use. Like a lot of cases with using Ansible for Linux operations, you're going to be taking a set of files from your control machine and then placing them in certain locations on the destination machines. And then similarly, what if we wanted our handlers to be stored in some external file so we didn't have to copy this handler code all over the place? This is what roles is going to allow us to do. So I'm going to actually move this site.yaml, and let's say we copied this roles1 into site.yaml. Now if we were going to reconstruct this using roles, I'm going to go ahead and remove everything below here. And I'm just going to add a roles line and then some name we're going to give this role. And I'll call this role ACL config, because in that iOS config section, we are actually configuring an ACL. Now I'm going to make a roles subdirectory, and I'm actually going to move this to be old because I'm going to recreate this. So I have a roles subdirectory that I've made. So relative to where my playbook, this highest level playbook, which I've given the name site.yaml resides, I'm going to have a roles subdirectory. And then in here, I'm going to start defining roles. And this role we're going to make is going to correspond to our ACL config role that we want to use. Now we could have given it any name we wanted, so we could have called it, axis underscore switch, or core underscore router, or some other function. Like for example, in my server build out, I'll have a role for NetMiko, I'll have a role for Napalm, I'll have a role for Ansible. And there's definitely going to be nuance on how you try to determine what your role structure should be. So once again, to step back, we're trying to build modularity because modularity is going to let us reuse things in an easier way. Now, I've made this ACL config directory inside my roles subfolder. And then inside here, I would start making things like a tasks subdirectory to store the tasks, a vars subdirectory to store the variables, a templates subdirectory to store the templates. And then in this example, a handlers subdirectory to store the handler. So if I look inside my ACL config, I now have this following structure. Now I'm going to zoom in first on the tasks. What Ansible is going to do whenever you make a role, it's always going to look inside a tasks subfolder in a file named main.yaml, main.yml, for any tasks to include. So it's going to look for this file. So now what I can do is I can copy the tasks from my original playbook. My original playbook was this. I'm going to take these tasks. We have two of them. We have a templating task, and we have an iOS config. Now notice I don't actually retain the task keyword. We're already in a tasks directory, so it knows, Ansible knows these are tasks. And then I'm just going to get rid of the extra indentation. So we're in this main.yml file in the tasks folder, and Ansible is going to automatically include these tasks. Similarly, if we go into the vars folder, Ansible is going to process the main.yml file in the vars folder. So inside this role, it's going to look here for extra variables to include. Once again, I can go steal the variables that I had defined here and just add them into this main.yml file. And then just get rid of the extra line numbering and remove the indentation, and now I have that variable defined. Similarly, in the templates directory, I could store my Jinja 2 templates here in this templates folder, and Ansible is automatically going to look in this folder for the templates. So it's going to be on the search path for when it's trying to find a template. And then the last thing I need to move into the new role structure is the handlers. So once again, I'm going to make a main.yml file. I am going to go back to my old playbook. I'm going to grab the handler. Once again, I omit the handlers line because it knows these are handlers. Go ahead and place it in here. See if I can get the formatting right. So we now have this one handler named writeMem that's going to do the following. So now if I go back to my role structure and I look at what I have the following. My tasks are located here. Additional variables I'm going to include for this role are located here. additional handlers that I'm going to include for this role are located here. And some additional templates are located here. So now if I go back to my main playbook, what do I need to do to execute all those tasks, including the consequences of those tasks, like the templating, the use of that one variable, the use of that handler? I need to call this role, and all I do to invoke that role is specify it as a role to use in my roles section of this playbook. So now my entire playbook contains this, but this role has a bunch of things included inside of it. And they're included inside of it in this roles directory structure. Now let's see if I actually reconstructed all of that correctly. And that's a good sign that it's actually executing things. So executed my show IPnt brief when that's actually got the wrong description. It is not a show IPnt brief. So let's go ahead and update that. So if I go to my role, it says it's doing show IPnt brief, and it's actually configure test1 ACL. And now you'll see when and let me remove my output file again to re-execute our playbook that contains our role. Now you can see it's configuring this ACL. It's executing our templating task. We're invoking our write mem, and we've completed it. So you can see I've taken this previously monolithic playbook, converted it over to a role structure. This role structure has basically moved various things like the tasks, the variables, the templates, the handlers into a separate part in the directory structure.